following program is intended for mature audiences.
The time is now for the hardest hitting, yet completely trivial.
Stop downloading!
Football.
The following program is intended for mature audiences.
The time is now for the hardest hitting, yet completely trivial.
Stop downloading!
Football show on the planet.
You are in rarefied territory.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Broken Helmet.
Let's rock.
And welcome everybody to the first episode of the year. We actually had a first episode way back when. Actually, I think it was in March. And then took a colossal hiatus of months and months on end. So we have fired everything back up. And I'm going to try not to make the fire up the mics comment yet again. And if you don't get that, then you haven't listened to episode 0. However, we are back. League is not. League is flat out dead. I mean, it is silent. Nothing going on right now. Everybody getting ready for training camp, but nothing really going on until training camp at this point. That's fine, because when it comes on in a tidal wave of action. Everybody gets all amped up, back into camp. You get your fantasy football drafts going. Everybody and their brothers are already trying to fight and book up their fantasy football draft date. I've gotten 2 or 3 emails, text messages in the past 48 hours about dates getting locked up. Everybody's trying to, with the amount of leagues that there are in the world today, there is not as many calendar days for everybody to get the primo spot, especially those leagues that you do in person, because people love live drafts. I love them myself. Used to do them forever for the league that I ran until it just got to be too much. People, kids, families, weekends get jam-packed and booked. And so we finally bit the bullet, and unfortunately we went to the online draft. Yes. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes the online draft. Actually, some people do, to be completely honest, because some people working under tight schedules do like to get that thing done in and out. It definitely cuts down on the time of a draft by leaps and bounds. It's just not nearly as fun. You don't get to sit back, tell stories, jokes, have some beers, throw it back with the boys and girls. But unfortunately, that's what people have to do, and I do it now as well, and it gets done very quickly. But point being, as I digress, is that everybody and their brother right now, while the camps have not started, are definitely trying to lock in their fantasy football dates. So around the NFL, what do we have going on? Well, there's not a lot, as I mentioned, but there was a couple of news and notes. And we'll start off, unfortunately, Alex Gibbs passed away. You might remember him. He was the offensive line coach for years for the Denver Broncos, and he was there with his own blocking scheme. He had he produced those monster years for Terrell Davis. Well, I don't know if he produced them. However, his strategy seemed to have a very positive impact on the statistical years that Terrell Davis had there. The Broncos won back-to-back titles. What was it, 97, 98, or 98, 99? 99, there was Packers and then Broncos back-to-back. But Terrell Davis, he was the 1998 MVP. Monster years out of him. And unfortunately, he was one of those careers just cut short. But you look at his years of production from 95 to 98. Starts off 23 years old. He rushes 1,100 yards, 1,500 yards, 1,700 yards, and then he had a 2,000-yard season where he had not only 2,000 yards, but 21 touchdowns. And he had a ton of touchdowns in those other years, too. So he was 1,107 TDs, 1,513 TDs, 1,715, and then the one I just mentioned, 2,000 yards and 21 touchdowns. And, you talk about running backs in today's day and age when they're just not as useful, right? There was another article I read, Pro Football Network, and they were referring to OVM, I think it was, some statistical reference to the running back position, saying it's the least valuable of all the skill positions. But it's not to say that it's not valuable, right? It's just how do you utilize the position. And obviously, because the passing game has become so paramount in the league, that's where running backs can help the most if they have that dual threat run plus the catch. You can use them out of the backfield, et cetera, et cetera. Again, I'm spending too much time on all these tangents, but you look back at these years, 95 through 98 for Terrell Davis, and you look at his receiving. So he's cranking out 1,500, 1,700, 2,000 yards on the ground and receiving. His first year was his best, 367. After that, 310, 287, 217. I mean, come on. You're not even getting used out of the backfield. Although, he 50 catches year one, 36, 42, and then 25. It's just a different NFL. But going back to Alex Gibbs, he had monster seasons as a coach installing this zone blocking scheme, helped contribute to not only Terrell Davis's monster years, but those back-to-back titles for the Broncos. He also was a coach over at the Falcons in 05 to 06. And if you remember their running attack back in the day, that was Warwick Dunn. Remember, Warwick Dunn left Tampa Bay, came over to the Falcons, and he was there with Michael Vick those couple of years. And I think Warwick Dunn, I looked it up before, he had pretty solid seasons, especially for Warwick Dunn, right? Great running back. I would have loved to have seen Warwick Dunn in today's day and age, the modern game. But even back then, I think he had like 3 seasons. Those 3 seasons specifically, I think, was like 1,100, 1,400, and 1,100 yards, which was great. Warwick Dunn was a fantastic player. I don't know if he'll make the Hall of Fame. Probably not. But NFL, a lot of people make the Hall of Fame. But Warwick Dunn was a great player, great person too, as if you want to look at all the charitable work, if I remember right, maybe he continues to do this, but he would end up providing a house for a family in need, whatnot, which is pretty cool, pretty nice thing. But anyway, Gibbs was the coach there, Falcons 04 to 06 with that running attack. And then he was also, and this is probably, when I was looking at all of his coaching history, this is the year that I got a kick out of. So he was the Texans coach in 08 to 09. And I was like, man, who was the running back then? I was like, it had to be, Arian the Barbarian, right? Arian Foster. That's what I thought right out of the gate. And I couldn't have been more wrong. It was not. And you want to take a stab at who it was. I will give you some time. Think about it. I'm telling you right away, it's not Arian Foster. It's not Arian Foster. Ready? Here it is. Steve Slayton. I kid you not. Steve Slayton. So Steve Slayton, 08, he rushes for 268 rushes for almost 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns, 50 receptions for 377. And then after that, he had nothing. 430 yards after that, and he was out of the league at 24. But that one year with Alex Gibbs working that line, Steve Slayton for the Texans had almost 1,300 yards. So Alex Gibbs, happy trails, my friend. Happy trails. So next up, We'll go to this one because I got a kick out of this. So Kevin Demoff, I'm probably going to screw up his name, COO for the Rams, right? So there's a court case taking place right now regarding St. Louis suing the Rams for leaving St. Louis. And the judge in that case just ruled that the owner's financial records could now be probed to assess punitive damages. So, big deal, right? Because this is St. Louis saying I don't know the nuts and bolts of the case. You can Google it. But you left the town arbitrarily, broke lease agreement, whatever the hell it was. We are suing you because you should be back here. And so the judge now looks back at it, and I guess there's enough material in the case to say, hey, why don't we assess what the punitive damages are? So we're going to go into the owner's piggy banks and figure out how much they have, what they have, where it's coming from, so we can figure out how much we can, just dock everybody to pay the city of St. Louis. And guess what? They don't like that, okay? So this means a couple of things. Number one, the owners are not going to allow this to happen. That means that St. Louis is going to get paid because this whole thing is going to go away real fast at this point. Pro Football Talk had noted this in an article I had read earlier today, and I am in full agreement because when push comes to shove, this is the same thing. You want to bring Trump up.
Don't be rude.
Easy, Don. Him and his whole tax return thing, right? You're not going to get to him. I don't want anybody to see him. Same principle here. These owners do not want anybody to see their financial records, and so this is that's never going to see the light of day, which means this case is going to go away very quickly. So St. Louis is going to get paid. This case is going to end. But what was funny about this was reading the Kevin Demoff thing. So they said we wanted to get to L.A., right? So he was doing such things as sending the NFL articles about the St. Louis crime rate. Yes. Hey! Nelly told you. Street sweepers all over the place. Heads up, St. Louis, bad. That's what Demoff's telling everybody. So he's sending articles like that to the NFL, but also what was kind of amusing is that I guess they decide to pen a letter saying goodbye to the fans of and the city of St. Louis. And I guess that the letter was called the AMF letter, which stood for Adios, Motherfuckers. So, as you could see, at least Demoff was not upset at all to leave the lovely city of St. Louis. But ultimately, St. Louis is going to get paid, and they'll just have to throw everything into their XFL team. I forgot the name of the St. Louis something, whatever. But unfortunately, the Rams are not coming back. You're just going to have to take the money and live with it. So one of the other stories coming up is that Martin McCauley, if you don't know that name, he is the Washington patent troll. He owns 44 silly little patent names as he's trying. I don't know. You can read the articles about what he says, but he's sitting on these things to try to get paid. He says that he's not, if I remember correctly, what I've read is that he said he was doing this out of the kindness of his own heart to prevent other people from doing it and was more than willing to get rid of these patents and just hand them over to Washington. I think that's what the story was. Well, he can get rid of at least one of them. The Warriors will be a no-go. Washington announces that they will not be using the Warriors as a name. So Mr. McCauley now has 43 patents left to try to wring the Washington football team out of some cash. Oh, that's right. He's not trying to do that. Whatever. And finally, Pro Football Reference. This one I dug. So this is fun, especially for stats geeks and people that love historical references and the whatnot. So they did the sack totals for all the years where they weren't officially tallied, right? I think 82, 83 is when sacks started. And before that, they just didn't exist. They didn't copy them. There's no statistical reference for it. So Pro Football Reference went back, watched all the tapes, and marked up every single sack they saw for the years that were not officially tallied by the NFL. There you go. Got that one out. And so here are a couple. I'm going to start with more modern people. So I'm going to take two guys and use them as the benchmark, if you will. So we're going to take LT, my favorite player of all time, and Reggie White, right? So you look at somebody like LT. Now, I think a couple of his early years weren't tallied officially, so I think these early years actually were Pro Football Reference added. But LT, 9.5, 7.5, 9 sacks. Now, this is where he gets into the meat of his career, right? 11.5, 13, 20.5, 12, 15.5, 15. And then he ends up going 10.5, 7, 5, 6. Career's over at that. Well, not over, but he did not have the impact after that last 15-sack season. And also, that very interesting about that is the 12-sack season he had after the 20.5, and that was the year that he was the MVP, is the 12-game shortened strike season. The following season, he has 15.5. That also was in 12 games. And that is because he ended up failing the drug test, and he had to miss the first 4 games of the season. So let's take his top 6 seasons there, 11.5. So that's his 4th season in, and the next 6 years, he basically tallied up 87.5 sacks. So Lawrence Taylor, the great Lawrence Taylor, we're talking about best 6-year run, 87.5 sacks. Now let's flip over Reggie White. Different position, defensive end versus the outside linebacker. Different kind of impact, but probably just as dominant. As much as I like Lawrence Taylor, Reggie was awesome. So his seasons looked like this: 13, 18, 21, 18, 11, 14, 15, 14, 13, 8, 12, 8.5, 11. I'm getting, it's boring yelling out these numbers, but it's pretty impressive. 12, 8.5, 11, and then he ended with 16 in the year that they won that Super Bowl, and then he retired. Came back and played one more rinky-dink year for the Panthers, had 5.5 sacks. But going by the same, now, of those, we'll take his best 6 seasons. Second season in the league, 18, 21, 18, 11, 14, and 15 for a total of 97 sacks. So LT's best 6 got 87.5. Reggie's got 97, so a good 10 more than LT.
Well, Rich, you said that LT had the 2 seasons where he only played 12 games and he had the 12 sacks and the 15.5 sacks, so it doesn't really apply.
Well, check it. Here's the deal. In his 3rd season in the league, Reggie White also played in the strike-shortened season. In the 12 games that he played that year, he had the 21 sacks. Whoa. Swear. That's his strike-shortened season of 12 games produced the 21. So while LT had 12 in that year, and then the following year when he was suspended, he had the 12 and 15.5 in the 12, which was the more impressive of the 2. It doesn't matter. Reggie had 21 in that strike-shortened 12-game season. It's like Sally Shells, she shells at the she shore. I'm just struggling with this strike-shortened season. But anyway, so those are the 2 modern players that are looked at, LT and Reggie White. Their best 6 years, LT's at 87.5, Reggie's at 97. They both battled 12-game seasons in their LT 2, Reggie 1. But now you look back at the historical players, and the one that just blew everybody out of the water was Deacon Jones. I mean, Deacon Jones, here you go, 9.5, 12, 6, 22, 19, 16, 21.5, 22, 15, 12, 4.5, 6, 5, 3. So, again, apply that 6-season stretch, and we are going to go, where are we going to start? We're going to start in his 4th year which is the 22 sack season. He goes from 6 sacks to 22. 22, 19, 16, 21 and a half, 22, and 15 for a total, get this, 115 and a half sacks. 115 and a half for his best 6-season stretch. And you want to top it all off, all of those games were 14 games, because they had not gone to the 16-game season yet. So all of those totals, 22, 19, 16, 21 and a half, 22, and 15, all came in a 14-game season. And it netted them 115 and a half sacks. That's how dominant in his time Deacon Jones was. And again, I'm talking about dominance and applying strictly stats to it. It doesn't really do justice to a player's performance on the field. But hey, it's just fun to talk about if you want to go back and watch tape. I have not seen Deacon Jones play, but regardless, you putting up these numbers, and I can only imagine what the tape would tell you. So that was another cool thing. And one other player that people were noting was Jack Youngblood, because they obviously did his seasons, and he also had a fantastic career. His stats went sacks 3, 6, 16 and a half, 15, 15, 14 and a half, 9 and a half, 7, 18, 11 and a half, 11 and a half, 4, 10 and a half, 9 and a half. So he had longevity, kind of like Reggie White there, where he just continued to get, these 10-sack seasons later on. His best 6-season stretch was his third year in the league, which started with 16 and a half, 15, 15, 14 and a half, 9 and a half, and 7. And that netted him 77 and a half sacks. So he was about 10 back from LT. But the season after that 6-year stretch was his strongest. So he had 18 the year after he had 7. So if you had extended that, then that puts him up to about 95 and a half sacks. And if you take LT's best of either bookend years and add it to his 87 and a half, which would be the 10 and a half after, he's going to have 97 and a half sacks. So basically, LT and Jack Youngblood, if you compare their best 7 seasons, are equal. And if you were to take the Reggie White, he goes up way past that because he was at 97 to begin with. And Deacon Jones, you're probably going to add on the 12 to his. So, that puts him up to, close to 130. But anyway, in reference to LT, Jack Youngblood had comparable numbers when you factor in that 7th year. But anyway, so that was fun. Stat Geeks got a kick out of that for the past 24 hours, looking at all those sack totals and looking back at what could have been had that statistic existed way back in the day. And those were some of the stories that I thought were worth throwing out there for the day. As for the big topic of discussion, look, the league isn't going on right now, so I was trying to think about, nothing's going on now, but what was going on back in the day? Go back earlier in the year. What were some of the big things? Some things have been getting beat to death, literally beaten to death. I cannot hear about Aaron Rodgers anymore, but something that was beaten to death, but has been very, very quiet in the past couple of months, is what I thought I would just let my mind wander on. And that was the once great Deshaun Watson. Now, remember Deshaun Watson, right? Big fucking quarterback in the league. And wanted out from his current team. Wanted out of Houston, off his current team. And that trade that was supposed to take in place was going to create this big movement and shift in power across the league. Deshaun Watson was going to change the landscape of the league. He was going away from a team that basically has no hope for the 2021 season to somewhere where he could have changed everything around. And, the team's thrown out. There was a ton. And I think they've been revealed most recently by a newspaper article. But, some of these teams, the Panthers, the Broncos, 49ers, Jets, Dolphins, Pats, Bears, Lions, Tigers, and Bears. Oh my, Washington football team. I mean, all of these teams would have seen a huge improvement with Deshaun Watson at the helm. I mean, think about the Broncos and the team. Everybody loves to talk about the Broncos and how good the team is minus the quarterback position, right? Right? So imagine the Broncos then having a quarterback, right? And Aaron Rodgers, right? That's where he's supposed to go, huh? What about the 49ers? 49ers, obviously, 1 season, well, 2 seasons removed, however you want to think about it, removed from the Super Bowl, and did so with Jimmy Garoppolo, and then you throw Deshaun Watson in there. Dolphins, they were turning everything around last year. They got to go with Tua. They were doing it with Tua and Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Game over, man. It's game over.
But they were still had a great season. Pats, obviously nobody knows what the hell to do with the Pats, but the Pats reloaded this year and spent a ton of money. The only other team to spend nearly as much as the Patriots were the New York Giants.
Are you fucking retarded?
That's exactly what he is.
No kidding. The Giants, who don't have a team that's that close to the Super Bowl and wasn't in a retooling process as, say, the Patriots, just decided to unload their pocketbooks and just spend and spend and spend and spend. And now we'll have to see what the season holds for them. However, now I'm going into my Giants rabbit hole here. But that said, Pats, we don't really know what could have been. The Bears, obviously, a rebuilding Washington football team. But, you take the Dolphins, the 49ers, the Broncos, and those 3 teams with Deshaun Watson would have seen very different results, I would think, in 2021. But anyway, that's not going to happen anymore. No more. Nobody is going to get Deshaun Watson.
One takes for nothing!
Because Deshaun Watson turned into Mr. Randy Watson.
That boy is good.
As Sexual Chocolate decided to hire masseuses to fly all around the states to come give him the good old rub and hug. I mean, come on. You got to be kidding me. We all know how it worked out. It didn't work out as well at all because he was going around to so many masseuses that finally the masseuses were just like, hey, do you work for Deshaun Watson? Does you say he has stress in his upper thigh area? You do, huh? And they all got together, and obviously some blood-sucking lawyer, I forgot the guy's name, but anyway, gets together, puts all the girls in a room, and just says, hey, since you're all working on Sexual Chocolate's upper thigh stress, did any of you actually feel uncomfortable? They're all like, yeah, me. I did. Me too. Completely unwanted. And they all got together, and now here we are with a colossal lawsuit against Deshaun Watson, thereby ending this entire chess game of where he lands. And who knows if this is a Deshaun Watson specific thing. Maybe other millionaires are doing the same thing. Who knows? Maybe Deshaun Watson ruined it for all the other people that were doing the same thing. The rub and tug game is really just gone into the toilet, right? Deshaun tried to do something outside the norm. Usually, you just find a nice little spa and Orchids of Asia or an Ion Spa or whatever the title might be. And you just leave the home, you go venture there, you spend your cash, and you have a good time. And Robert Kraft, obviously, didn't work out well for him. That was a disaster, but got ultimately thrown out. However, Kraft kind of blew it up. So, the rub and tug shacks have been getting shut down left and right for years on end, decades on end, I guess. But I mean, none of them really worked out well. The Robert Kraft Orchids of Asia, we all know that one. Up here in Jersey years back, maybe early 2010s, there was one, I think in Paramus, Teaneck, somewhere like that. And they ended up running a raid of the place, and there was nothing but New Jersey police in the whole joint. So it was, it was just an absolute disaster. And for all you Bergen Countyites and female listeners out there that might have heard me mention the Ion Spa before, that place was fine. There was nothing wrong with that place at all. It just closed down for natural purposes, natural causes, lack of funds. Had nothing to do with anything performed within the walls. So just forget that I even mentioned the Ion Spa. But where am I going with this? Oh, that's right. The massage game is on the ropes, people. It's on the ropes. The internet doesn't help anything out. And, whenever you get a site dedicated to your profession with along the lines of tugmats.com or tugmats, whatever, it's near the end. It's near the end of the game. So, Sexual Chocolate ends up trying to reinvent it, I guess, or at least maybe, like I said, this is something that multimillionaires do anyway by having all these girls flown out, and it has now ultimately backfired. So this big changing of power that was going to take into place in the NFL is not going to happen. And where are we at with this is what I was thinking about, because you just don't hear anybody talking about Deshaun Watson at all anymore. For good reason, because I just don't know how this thing ends. Now, the NFL and police could hit Watson in this case separately, right? So currently, all this is just a sheer money grab through a civil trial. And before anybody gets all up in arms, those girls were brutalized. I'm not saying that they weren't. What I'm saying is that it's a civil case. It is not a criminal case right now. So this thing all revolves around cash. The police could kick that up a notch and could actually file charges, criminal charges. They have not to this point. The NFL could do any number of things thanks to their nebulous conduct policy. So they could ultimately just show Mr. Watson the door for the season and just say, hey, you can't play until this case is over, whatever they want to do, right? So those are the two things that happen. NFL could do something, and the actual police could do something. Now, the third option, obviously, would be for the civil case to just go away. For Mr. Watson to pony up whatever money that the prosecutor it's not the prosecutor, the attorney. What is that? It's not a defense attorney. It's not a prosecutor. It would be, whatever. You know what I'm going at. The lawyer for all of these girls in the civil case, just to pony up and give him whatever he wants for his clients and call it a day. Now, one of the things I think about in that case is that even if he resolved the case like that and paid everybody whatever they wanted to get paid, the NFL said, okay, sure, nothing happened. There's nothing on record. You just settled the case out of court, and so you can play. Maybe they give him a little suspension or whatever. But even if that happened, wouldn't the Me Too movement just come out and blast them? You don't want to mess with Me Too. And wouldn't that apply here, right? Because wouldn't they come out and say, who's going to embrace this quarterback, this character who sexually assaulted, sexually offended, I don't know, made advances on these women like that and objectified them and treated them as less than people. I mean, that would be, to me, the next stage of the whole Deshaun Watson case, should there be a payoff of the plaintiffs. Then it would become a public relations matter, and Me Too would come after him. Now, obviously, this could have happened in other cases, which in the NFL, which didn't materialize. That being Antonio Brown, right? Because he had his little incident with the one woman. I don't think it was one of his child's mothers. I think it was just a girlfriend. But on top of the crazy wacko shit that he did with her, standing behind her naked, I think was part of the story. He also said stuff on phone calls talking about, or no, it wasn't phone calls, it was text messages referencing this girl's children in pictures and saying, oh, they're broke as shit, just look at them in the picture. I never thought Antonio Brown was going to get over that one. Forget the girl and the sexual advances or standing behind her naked or whatever. I mean, you're going to shit on kids and call them poor because they look a certain way in a picture. I mean, the PR behind that, I never thought he was going to touch the field again. If not for the women, for the sheer fact that, I mean, who can stand behind that, right? I mean, shitting on kids for whatever reason. Leave the kids out of it. I know a lot of girls will say leave the girls out of it, but I'm just saying leave the kids definitely out of it, right? Stay away. Didn't matter there, though, and I don't know if it would matter here. I don't know if there would be a political, public relations backlash to the point that even if Watson settled, he wouldn't play. I thought for sure, if it goes to criminal trial, and even if he gets out, but one of these girls goes on the stand, I think that would probably be a public relations ender right there, because then all the stuff would be vocalized on record, and you could just point to it and you could just say, really? You're going to get behind this guy when he did this? Then again, we don't really know what actually took place behind these closed doors. So there is a really big sea of murkiness around this whole case. That being said, it was going to be a big movement in the NFL. It's not anymore. We have no clue if the NFL is going to do anything. We don't know if the police are going to do anything. We don't know how the civil case is going to end. And we don't know after all of that resolves if there's going to be any kind of public relations movement against Watson or against the NFL to have Watson not play anymore. So let's say everything aligns that he actually does come back to the NFL to play. So let's say he settles the case. Me Too doesn't amount to much. The NFL gives him some kind of silly suspension. And now it's up to him and the Texans to find a new place for him to play. That whole thing has changed too. Because think about the teams that we named before. Panthers, Broncos, 49ers, Jets, Dolphins, Pats, Bears, and Washington football team. And where they're at now. Well, the Jets, the 49ers, the Bears, and the Pats have definitely moved on. The Jets, 49ers, Bears, Pats all drafted a quarterback. Now, that's not to say that if Watson wasn't available, they wouldn't have been, hey, look, we'll take Watson and we'll flip whoever it is that we drafted, whichever one team you're talking about. But I don't really think they will. Now, the Panthers, they've definitely moved on from Watson. Because with the issues stemming from Richardson when he got ousted as the owner, still fresh, they will never entertain another controversy like this. Not a chance. They're out of it completely. The Eagles are a team that wasn't named, I don't think, but people have talked about them related to Watson. They could definitely be a play. Jalen Hurts, you send him packing. Sayonara, thanks for playing. Dolphins, Broncos, Washington football team. They seem to be the teams left, right? Eagles, Dolphins, Broncos, Washington football team would seem to make sense. I mean, the Broncos, they keep talking about Aaron Rodgers. Even though they signed Bridgewater, they want somebody else. It was a stopgap move. Whoever gets Watson, it'll cost him $10.5 million in cap space this year. So you just got to do some kind of accounting to get those books. I don't know if any of that happens. There's just a part of me, and I think I have read and heard this elsewhere too, so I don't think I'm alone, that just thinks that 2021 is going to be kaput for Mr. Watson. I don't think we're seeing this guy play this year. If he does play this year, I think it would be only for the Texans, if you could even imagine that happening. Because I don't know what team intra-season. I mean, we're already talking late July into August. He would have to go to a team, learn the playbook, become accustomed to the linemen, skill positions. It just doesn't make much sense anymore. And if it's in the middle of the season, you can just forget it because nobody's coming cold into a new team intra-season unless that team is a bad team. And we're not looking at it, the Eagles, Dolphins, Broncos. We don't know what's going to happen with the Broncos, but the Eagles, Dolphins, they're probably going to be contending in some way, shape, or form. I don't think the Eagles are that good this year. That's my own personal opinion. I think the Dolphins are. The Washington football team has a solid defensive front four. And they just went and they put what do you call it there? Oh my God, how did I forget his name already? It's because it's just a random middle of the day and my brain stopped working. But they put Conor McGregor back there. You know who I'm saying. It's not Conor McGregor. He dressed up like Conor McGregor last year or 2 years ago for the not the Washington football team, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Ryan Fitzpatrick is the name that I completely just forgot.
Leroy Jenkins!
So with Ryan Fitzpatrick with the Washington football team, maybe they make a play for Watson and then just put him on the bench for the year. I don't know. I'd have to look at their cap situation, but that might be something that works, right? Let Fitzpatrick play this year and then let Watson take over next year. Broncos could do something similar, right? They grab him for next year and let him ride the pine. Maybe if the team's terrible, they put him in there and they see how it goes. But the Eagles and the Dolphins, I can't see it depending on how their years go. If they're in contention. But again, maybe it's the long play. Maybe all these teams would move things around to try to get Watson on their team, just looking for future years, which would make sense. That also made me start thinking about one other team, and I thought I had come up with a really original idea, and then I Googled this, and of course, Bill Barnwell had floated this idea earlier. But what I started thinking about was, if this ends up being a long play and Watson is going to be traded not for 2021, but more so 2022, what about a team like the Green Bay Packers, right? Because the Packers have already said that they're going to move on from Aaron Rodgers, or at least if they haven't said that, I shouldn't say that. But if he doesn't retire, he's not going to be there next year. So he's either going to play this year for the Packers and then be gone next year, or he's just going to retire this year. Yeah, sure, I guess he still could get traded at some point this late, but I doubt it. It wouldn't really make sense for anybody, including Aaron Rodgers, even though he hates the Packers. If he's got one more year left in him, why not try to win it there at Green Bay? If he does pull it off, it would just solidify his greatness in the area, and it would give him another title. So you leave this year and you go to one of these other teams and you don't win it and you never go on, it's just going to be, bad blood, Favre-esque type ending to your Green Bay era. It would make sense for him to just grind out the Packers. But let's say Packers come about next year as a trade. Now, it would work because I think that once you get rid of Rodgers, his cap hit was, what was it? Let's see. I had this pulled up before. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. The Packers salary cap rate for next year is about $30 million over the cap. Rodgers' cap hit is $39 million. So with Aaron Rodgers taking off, you'll end up being under the cap, and then you can play around with the rest of it to bring Watson in. Now, I don't think they have the assets that would make a trade such as that acceptable for the Texans. However, obviously I think the Eagles and the Dolphins have a bunch of draft picks next year. Again, I probably should have done some research so I could have presented this here, but you can do it yourself. If the Packers could work something out, that would be great. I would love to see Watson over there with the Packers. Maybe you could actually give Love in return, right? Here, take him, we'll take him, and you move along. And then Love could start in Houston and start his career up, right? Because that's what they're thinking is going to be the quarterback for Packers' future years. So they would just be in Houston, and you would get a solid quarterback, known commodity in return in Watson. So, but we will never know, because if you rewind the record, the part where the whole song starts is what happens with the case. And we just don't know that yet. So we have to wait and see what happens to Mr. Randy Watson and sexual chocolate. And if he can get out of this this disaster that he's dug himself into with his decision to fly masseuses around from all over the world to work on his upper thigh stress. And we'll see. And that's where we're at right now. So that's what I was thinking about today, and that's all I thought about. That's all I had to think about it right now. It's obviously a conversation that's been had before and probably will be had again as soon as he settles his case. But until then, we just have to sit and wait. So there you go. That's it for the day. I am punching out. I will be back again, I don't know, some point tomorrow, the next day. Try to get more pearls of wit or wisdom thrown out there for you to chew on. Until then, everybody enjoy. Peace.